What's today? Like noon. What if we're talking in the mornings?
Right.
All right, I will call back to order the City Council Emergency Special Meeting that we continued from 5 PM. And so we left off at Agenda Item C, appoint someone to fulfill some or all of the duties while a search is commenced for an administrator. And I know the group, we were waiting for Amber to come and to hear from Amber. So do we want to start there? Everyone?
Yep.
Thank you. I was quickly briefed on some of this. I was not watching. So my understanding is that you guys wanted to hear directly from me and not third hand. So I appreciate that. In my conversation with Jennifer earlier today, she asked me my thoughts and feelings on this, if I had the availability and capacity to do that. So I greatly appreciate that thought as we are in the midst of busy season here. My schedule is freeing up a little bit compared to the last 2 months. In our dialogue, I said, I like to think that I'm a team player. So if we need somebody to step up, I will help. With that, I want it clearly defined what the roles and responsibilities are. I know the time frame is maybe a little loose as we work through some of this. But my biggest thing is knowing what would be expected of me, knowing that there are no issues with me being a part of the union representation, things like that, and that primarily that there wouldn't be a lot of personnel issues peer to peer, and it'd be mostly kind of enacting some of the logistics of the position. And so those were some of my first thoughts today when we discussed it. I don't know what else was said at the meeting, but my biggest thing is having an understanding of the expectations.
Angel, can you just jump in on the Amber's comment about the union piece? Did you hear what she said there?
Can you repeat it one more time?
Just that we're part of a union here, and I just wanted to make sure that there's no conflict or any issues with being in the union, having representation of the union, and anything of that nature.
Which union is it?
The supervisors.
Okay. I'd have to look a little bit further into it. We've kind of looked into other union implications, but I can confirm it later. I won't be able to do it right now.
Sure. So if you guys had questions for me, or I don't know if that kind of covered the basis, summary of our dialogue.
Mark, do you?
I just have a question for us. Are we gonna put a timeline on this? You know, hopefully 2 weeks, whatever, because we don't, how long because
I can't put a timeline on anything in my perspective based off of us not knowing what the end result's going to be, which means hiring a full-time city administrator. So maybe we'd be lucky it'd be 6 weeks. I think likely we're all on the same page. It could be 6 months, upwards to 9 months. We don't know.
let me rephrase that. Will this be a position until if we go forward for a full-time city administrator? Or will this be will we be also looking for an interim city administrator? Or will this?
That's actually something council has to decide.
Right, so that,
No, we're just discussing right now.
right.
Yeah.
So just even with the notes prepared from Tim for tonight's initial meeting and the insight that he gave us in the couple weeks was very beneficial for us to even have this meeting tonight and get there. So there was a lot of great information that somebody with a lot of expertise in this area was able to provide for us. But to Jesse's point, and what I said earlier, it would be my goal to do it as quick as possible, but yeah, 6-8 months. Also too, what would that look like for Amber or any other staff going into, I don't know your seasons, your busy seasons, you know, if you're saying you're going into a little slower season, I don't know what that does for us, but definitely an option to continue to look for somebody else to give us more guidance in this as we move ahead.
I don't think it's gonna be to our advantage to make an appointment tonight for interim duties, seek another interim, then to continue the search for an actual replacement. I don't see that being viable for us. Excuse me, I lost my voice because I talk too much. I think it's wise for us to consider, truthfully, being able to have this position be filled through the duration until we have sourced and there's a starting date for that replacement full-time city administrator. And again, that could be 6 months, give or take. So I guess some of Amber's points or questions, does anybody have comments on that piece? Or feedback?
Maybe a question for the attorney that Amber brought up also to you with, in terms of any, any sort of personnel issues and stuff. Are there limitations on what it could have or what it couldn't have, or how does that work? If, can we do that? I mean, in 9 months, I would have to imagine there'd be maybe some personnel thing, somebody, 9 months, 6 months, 9 months would be a long time to go, hey, there's no personnel issue or question to deal with. So how would we address that specifically? Do you have feedback for us on that?
Yeah, when you guys discuss, or if it comes about, the designees could decide whether or not Amber, if she fills the position, brings it up to you as or the two designees at that point, because it's almost inevitable for something to come up in that amount of time.
Why do we have to have two designees?
It could be one. It's up to the council to decide. It just can't be more than a quorum.
Why does it have to even be one? Why couldn't it just be the council as a whole?
That could be an option too.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that make more sense?
Well,
Yeah.
based off our org chart, that's how it should
That's what
be.
it should be.
Correct. So question for you, Mr. Pearson. Is there opportunity for us to consider this to be a joint or a dually held role? Two city employees being able to maintain this position?
Just like when you did this process, when Jenny Max left and you were looking for somebody to hold down the fort at that point, you can designate any somebodies you want, one or multiple, and give them their, what duties they're doing of the city administrator position. So the answer is yes. One thing I'm a little confused about though, is just in this discussion I just heard, are you essentially looking right now to, sort of an emergency basis, put somebody in, or somebody's in that spot with the idea of then finding another Tim Cruikshank to take over the interim role, who will then hold down the fort and help you get through the process of finding a permanent? Or are you thinking about whoever you designate tonight to hold down that fort while you go through that permanent process?
My opinion to response to you would be the latter. To not go seek an additional interim city administrator, but to rather have this individual from the city staff or individuals that would be taking that interim position to maintain that until we identify who the full-time replacement is for the city administrator. That would be my thought.
Yeah, that's where I kind of wanted clarification. So this is, so I think if Jesse and I might be on the same page where if Amber takes over, she'll be there until we get a full-time city administrator.
Unless you guys would want a fourth change in that position.
I have a question for Amber. Would you be comfortable, because the conversation you and I had this afternoon was a little bit different. So just to make sure you'd be comfortable with that.
I think it's most important to get to keep the timeline moving, but also do it correctly. So I understand that it can take that amount of time. It is definitely not my career aspiration and very far from Park and Rec director duties. But yeah, that would make logical sense to me of the timeline and what it will take to onboard somebody new.
So I would be in favor of that then.
Okay.
Well, like having less change.
Mhm. I have another idea I'd like to throw out there of going back to what I was asking our city attorney on, of this being a duly held interim position. I'd like to repose the question to both Kiki and Maggie. If there is interest in duly maintaining that position on the interim basis with equal authority until we have that full-time replacement for the city administrator position, would there be interest from the both of you to maintain that?
Can I ask our labor attorney if that is, I know Tom says that, but the way our ordinance is written, how do you have two people in the same role?
Yeah, the way it's set up right now, the city administrator also has the role of treasurer. So they would also have to, what you could do is separate those two and have that executed duly, but otherwise it won't be workable.
What was that last bit?
What was the very last part, Angel?
Sorry, it just wouldn't work out necessarily to have all of those duties, the duties of the city administrator split up between, unless somebody is willing to take on just that treasurer role.
What's your response?
Your agenda item says, just like it said last time, appoint someone to fulfill some or all of the duties. So you're not right now appointing a city administrator, and you
No.
didn't, when you did this initially, you gave Kiki a role to do some city administrator duties, but not all. So, I mean, if you designate one or a couple people to do city administrator duties, as long as you keep the one function that Angel's talking about separate, then I don't know why you couldn't do that. One does this, one does that. But that goes what Amber asked you about too. I mean, whoever this is gonna have to have some, and you're probably not in a position to do that tonight, but some pretty clearly defined, this is what we'd like you to do, this is what we expect you to do. And
I would like to see us follow and maintain the hierarchy of the organization as it is written within our city ordinance. The city administrator / clerk position is essentially the quarterback of the city. Comes to the council on a monthly basis to be able to present their pieces with the department heads and their topics. I think us giving the ability to the team to be able to run is going to produce better fruit for us in the long term. And I feel comfortable if that was to be held city administrator with the treasurer, and they both are restructured so they're on the even keel above the department heads. I think that gives us good runway to maintain what we have in front of us, with the budgets, with the land, et cetera, to be able to continue to push to find that replacement city administrator in as quick as a time frame as possible.
One more question for you, Amber. Like Tom just said, we're not prepared to define those duties. But you yourself today, in thinking about this, have you already defined duties where you're just like, this would be a no-go for me?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I think my opinion is consistency. Picking one person, see them all the way through until we get all this going. Try and expedite this as fast as possible, you know, so that we can move on to more important issues, I think is my goal with all of it. And so whatever the most efficient way to do that is, you know. Yes, that's kind of my thoughts on it.
I agree that we want to move the process forward in, we don't want to delay, but we also want to do the process right.
Correct. Yep.
Yes, to me, it's, this concept of having two in the role is confusing. I think to streamline it and what makes the most sense based on how our ordinances are set, having one and getting on that path to finding a full-time administrator based on our discussion during the council workshop seems to make the most sense from a management, operation, efficiency standpoint, so that there's clarity.
Tom, what would be the best way for us as a group to define those roles, or Angel or whoever wants to answer, Is that a separate meeting? Do we let whoever we pick define the roles? Do we define them later? What's the clearest process for us to do that?
If you're, if you're not appointing an interim city administrator, but instead doing like you did last time, which is give some roles of the city administrator to a person or persons, then a couple of you could be designated to help designate what those roles are or what that role is, much like you did last time. Whoever those, I think it was maybe Jennifer and Joe.
Right.
Sat with and then sort of
Yeah.
managed that process. To me, this looks like the same thing. But I do, you didn't ask me this, but I do caution the idea that whoever you appoint those duties to, that you decide that's going to be for the long haul. This could be a 9-month search. That becomes difficult, I think, to depart from the idea of having a replacement for Tim Cruikshank, who can guide you through some of that stuff. Didn't ask my opinion, but
Well, that was my next question. What is your opinion?
my opinion is that you should do what you did last time, which is appoint somebody immediately right now to fulfill some of those city administrator duties. Find a replacement for another Tim Cruikshank. Let that person come in here, steer you through your search, steer you through your budgeting. My fear is that whoever gets delegated these city administrator duties, if they're all of them, it's going to become more than people realize, especially with some of the things that you've got in front of you, like a budget cycle and all the rest of it. We've got road bond issues. We've got some big things in front of us right now. As much as people might feel like they can assimilate those tasks, it becomes a lot, I'm afraid.
It does.
Right.
So to my point, you have two individuals that can help bear that burden. Is it feasible from your eyes?
Yeah, I don't know. I said what I thought, and I don't know that I have more to add to it.
What about the duties of treasurer? Is that going to be duly assigned to the interim city administrator that's selected?
It's the way the job description's written when we went through this the first time, is it's city administrator treasurer. So it was those duties and responsibilities. So I don't know why we would try to split it up right now. Angel, if you want to chime in, I mean, we've been in extensive conversations with our labor attorney and taking guidance from them. I don't know why we'd veer from the guidance from them, but I guess, Angel, if you want to chime in, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, at this point, I think that the city could consider having one individual set for it, consider doing the 2-3 designees to decide the duties and responsibilities at a later point, and then consider whether or not to bring it back on splitting up the duties if it ends up being to a point where it's too much. So that could be considered at a later date, but I think at the time being, the city needs an interim city administrator.
By hiring an outside one like Tom just referenced, that route, is that what you're also recommending?
For now, because we haven't discussed any kind of third party, it would have to be an employee.
Right.
But yeah, the city could consider doing that as well if they want to take steps to doing that. But that's again, something the designees could discuss and propose at a later date, not during this meeting.
I do see the need for staff and stuff to keep it, you know, going. My preference would be one person, you know, within the city, but then also too, with the time frame it's going on. Jesse makes a valid point, then Tom, that might become overwhelming down the road. And where we maybe would have to look for outside help or assign another person. You know, and so I guess, I don't know. I see valid points with all of it. It's just what's the best option and I mean, I don't know. Do we know how long it took last time? Tom, do you know what the timeline was last time? Forgive me, the abbreviation, that looked for when Jenny was hired? Do we know what that timeline was?
Yeah, Lori, Lori Hemish, resigned as the city clerk just to end in 2000, at the end of 2016. And then the discussion was had about whether to convert to a city administrator process. So once that was determined, then that search took, I think Jenny started here in July or August. So that's a rough time frame.
So,
It was all of 8 or 9 months. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it's gonna be
right,
it's unlikely that it's happening in 60 days, right? If you look at the other cities around us that had administrator gaps and how long it took them to fill as well. I still stand by, I think we need to go with one person right now, and to your point, Joe, if at a later date, depending on how long this takes, we feel we need to adjust, we can always adjust. We have meetings every month, we can call a special if needed.
but do we want to just make those decisions now? I feel like versus just calling a special meeting, doing this all over again?
Make it now.
Yeah, I'd prefer to make a decision right now.
Okay, without hearing any objection like we did last time, my motion to this would be essentially that we move to make Kiki interim city administrator and move to make Maggie the treasurer, to be able to enact with them the ability to maintain those dual positions until we have an interim city administrator. And also then removing the line of, on this proposed motion language, to remove only to the extent necessary and only after they meet and discuss with city council designee or designees prior to performing each necessary duty and responsibility. From my perspective, maintaining status quo as if, say, Jenny Max was still here as a city administrator, they can perform their duties just as she would have done, and she would have brought them to our attention on the monthly regularly scheduled meetings or a workshop, you name it. Does that make sense or no? Silence sometimes is not good.
No,
Wait.
There's a lot there. So, so I got questions on.
I'm gonna say something. I feel like we called this special meeting to put the best interest of the city first and to set the city up for success because our ordinances require us to have someone in this role. There are many of us that have been putting over 40 hours a week into the city when it's not our full-time job, when we're in the heart of our busy seasons for our own businesses, that have been giving our time, treasure, and talent to the city. And I don't know what's going on tonight, but I feel this is becoming very political, and it's perhaps there's maybe conversations that have been going on behind the scenes between maybe staff and certain council members that are denigrating other members of this council, and that is not right. We can agree to disagree, and that's fine, but I ran for mayor for one reason, because I believe in the city. I want to try to do the right thing for the residents of the city, and that is what we have been trying to do. So I'm disappointed in the conversations that are coming from some people tonight, and disappointed in what I'm hearing from denigration and perhaps defamation and slander behind the scenes, and that's just not right. If we want to be a great city, we need to respect one another. We need to treat one another with kindness, and if there are issues, we need to come forward with it. But we have spent extensive time working with our labor attorneys, and it's not to undermine anyone. It's to try to set up the city on the best path. And that is what we're trying to do tonight. And so I'm just gonna say that because I don't know what other word to use, and I'm disturbed by what's going on tonight. But I don't know why we continued the meeting to 7 to hear from Amber if one council member had 2 other people in mind he wanted, which already declined.
Because
I realize there was an hour conversation out in the parking lot that some of us weren't a part of, but
I don't understand what a conversation in the parking lot would have to do with anything. There was a conversation with city staffers. There was no other council members there to pose as a quorum threat. I made my point clear in the first meeting in regards to not having Amber present with 2 city staffers declining. I thought it'd be worthwhile for us to be able to have Amber be here to represent herself.
right.
During
she
that
was.
time frame, I had conversations with these 2 to see, is there opportunity for you both to be able to maintain the position that you're in right now with the city administrator and treasurer spot? And we still haven't heard from them if they would still be interested in that or not. Going back to a council meeting month and a half or 2 months ago, we had already appointed Kiki Lindberg to that position. And I don't see any reason why she wouldn't be qualified to be able to maintain that same position with the support of the council. So the comments of defamation is,
I think a lot's changed in that time. I'll just leave it there.
Have a motion on the table.
There's a motion, but there's no second yet.
Can I just ask a question? We have to have a second to talk.
Ask your question.
To just clarify what Jesse said.
Yes.
All right, so then I will,
There can't be conversation if there's not a second. It just dies for lack of a second. So if you, like Mark did earlier, if you want to have a conversation, then you should second the motion so there can be a conversation and then eventually a vote. And by seconding it, it doesn't mean you're supporting what's being, you're just doing it to
You're
further,
moving on
to
to that
further a
discussion.
Just having
conversation.
discussion.
yeah, because otherwise we're at a stalemate right now.
Yep.
Yeah, so I will just move on to keep the meeting rolling, second, and then, just
For the
clear.
purposes of discussion.
Yeah, for purposes discussion, now we can discuss stuff, clarify. One of the biggest things that I'm seeing are coming out of here that has been asked, because I was on the committee with Jennifer, putting in time with Tim, that came out of here, that we should have a discussion on too, that maybe needs to happen sooner or later for all fairness or parties. What are the roles and duties we really want them to see? Because I feel like it's a little backwards. So, if we have a quick meeting on, we want them to, whatever, sign checks, right? They need to do that. We want them to do this, to Tom's point there. And then also, I know with Tom Blommer, working with WSN on all this road bond coming up. It's gonna be a tremendous amount of work coming forward. I mean, we're working on the Parks project, another big project, tremendous amount of work. In the 6-9 months, everything with Stephen with planning and zoning, tremendous amount of work coming forward, how can we best serve ultimately the citizens and businesses of this town, knowing we have all this coming forward, too. Nothing against any staff member, but all the staff members here do have their day-to-day jobs to do. And if this is gonna last 6 to 9 months, what kind of our thoughts or our processes with it? Just to be fair to all the staff, we've got several no's tonight. We've got a interested party, but also to move it forward. I think for us to have a little discussion about that would be maybe appropriate. So.
One important aspect would be the budget, because if it's 6 to 9 months, we're in the budget cycle. So the individual would need to help keep the budget process on track.
So I'm looking maybe for staff to help out in the past, Maggie, that mainly has fallen on you, budget work, or was that in combination with you? Who actually helped compile the budget numbers? I don't know, was that Jenny mainly doing that? Was she relying on you for a lot of those resources?
Probably a little combination of both. I do a lot of the back end work. All the department heads bring their budget to me. I put it together. I'll say Jenny more or less put it in a pretty spreadsheet, like presentation to present it to you guys.
Okay, so kind of a combination, okay? So what other things, maybe Tom with the road bond, you know? I guess that would be a question for Tom and, you know, maybe WSN on that project, you know? How much of that can you bear and take on? How much of that, you know, involves the city administrator to just help us get an understanding too? Maybe with bonding, stuff like that.
Well, I think the road bonds, you know, so we're, in particular, we're talking about the 2026 road bond. That's next one up. Right now, we are working with the engineer and the city attorney to get the required right of way for that project. So, and once that is done, which would probably be this fall, that we would have that right of way. At that point, you would be, getting final plans and specs. And once we have that, which I would say November-ish,
Yeah.
you would want to be having meetings to review that with the public. The details of that, those final plans and specs. Probably around January, you're gonna want to approve that project to go ahead for bids for construction. So I don't know that you need an administrator so much for that. I mean, there's kind of a process to it. Mostly it's work that the engineer and the attorney will do, so.
So there's not a certain part where you hand it over to the city administrator to do?
I don't think so, 'cause
Parts
I
and
can
pieces.
talk to all the parts that
Okay.
would be of interest to most folks, I think.
Jenny provided a, I don't know, like a spreadsheet or a to-do list if you're gonna go out to get bonds on the steps in order to do that. And
Well,
there
the
was
bond, the bonding would be, you
Through
still
that.
have PFM,
right,
so.
and there was
That's
just some
through them.
setup for that in order to get TFM to do the work.
No, this is all helpful to, I think, talk about, so we know what we're realistically looking at.
And then the 27 road bond, we recently set in motion, with WSN to do the 30% plans on that. So that would keep them going for a little while, I believe.
Right. So we have the City Hall Street, Church Street, Nisswa Avenue, that the proposal was signed last council meeting. And, we're getting started on that one. To get to like 30% or as far as we can get with the budget that we have and, yeah, which is a good first step on what we've been doing for all the other 2025 or 2026 projects too. But we're just jumping ahead a little early for the 2027.
I do think that it would be wise at some point in the near future for us to have a workshop with PFM regarding all the bonding and probably talk a little bit preliminary about funding for any infrastructure work you might want to do with the property.
Right.
At least get their perspective,
That's another big thing that we have.
and that'll help give you some direction, I think, to move
Right.
forward with.
Yeah, to that note, that's obviously the other big thing that we pushed off tonight's agenda earlier, you know, that we have the whole property to talk about, you know, so. Yeah, what I'm afraid of, you know, if we don't, have enough people, enough staff, enough hours in the day, that we're gonna lose a calendar year to figure out this big stuff that we have ahead of us, you know, the property being one of them. We pushed that off tonight just for this reason, you know. We really do, you know, to follow the city ordinances structure, we really do need to have somebody in place to do that, you know. Tremendous amount of work, even, you know, with Steven, in coordination with what that might do with planning and zoning and stuff. So, yeah, if we're looking at 6 or 9 months, I do see it as a big role to do it properly for people. So back to your point, I do see having multiple people, also to multiple people, but also too with even multiple people here, you know, can we still get all this done with these big projects, or, you know, are we still better off looking for just an outside person to come in like we had with Tim to help with us, you know, but I don't know.
I would say this, you know, when Jenny came on as the new city administrator, you know, things like road projects were new to her too. This was her first city administrator role. So, you know, I worked a lot with her early on with projects we had going then, it would have been the sewer expansion at that time, stuff like that. So I think in the case of these road bonds, it's no different, no matter who you bring in. If it's Amber, if it's, another Tim Cruikshank, they're still gonna need a lot of input from somebody like me and probably Bill and Tom to do that. And so I don't think anything's really changed there. You know, obviously, if you have somebody with a lot more experience in the administrator role, they would have probably a little more confidence, but, I don't think it'll change the process on that so much. I'd be more concerned with, like the property development. I think there's where we have a little weakness.
Right. Agreed.
And I think that's why the motion, when we originally said it, was assign some of the duties and responsibilities, right? Because there are things like Tom knows how his department runs. He knows what to do. He knows who to work with, right? So it's the items that, you know, are critical functioning items that need to be done for the city, right? Like if we don't have someone for, let's say, 6 months or 8 months, we have to do the budget, right? So we need someone to help just be the point person to make sure everyone's on track with that when it comes to council for different points of that, whether we have another budget workshop or whatever it is in the process. And also like some of these things we discussed in the workshop before this about reaching out to different search firms to bring back proposals for what that would look like to begin the search process for a full-time administrator, right? Like that's, to me, would fall to this position. To hire the consultant to do an organizational review, which we discussed in our workshop, right? That person would then work with Keith. So that's why it was some of the duties and responsibilities, because not all of them might be necessary, right? I don't know that we need to overcomplicate it or overthink it or overconfuse it, because from my lens, in different organizations I've worked in, large, medium to small, we don't want to create an environment where we're creating more chaos and confusion.
I would say this, no matter who you bring in as the final city administrator, they have to grow into the role. They're probably not from Nisswa. They may be new, to the idea of being an administrator. Maybe they were in a position like mine or Amber's or whoever's, and they're stepping up into that role. They're gonna have to grow into it. So some of the stuff is, they're gonna have to learn. I don't think you're gonna find somebody that's perfect right off the bat. And so I wouldn't be afraid, say, to allow Amber to fill the shoes for now.
Thanks, Tom.
I think it's a lot of the reasoning for my point of having that burden be carried by 2 individuals, the 2 that I made the motion for, still on the table. And I think for the basis of maintaining that through until we are fortunate enough to find our soon-to-be future city administrator, I think it provides the right path forward based off of what we have at hand. So there is a motion and a second.
Is there any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
I'll just say nay.
Joe?
I just got a question, you know, they both said no the first go around.
We're at a vote.
So we can't ask that question at this time?
Tom, can we? No.
Yes, shoot, I guess that'd be a question that want to ask.
So are you abstaining?
I guess,
Or are you voting?
I don't know if we're forcing anybody into the issue.
I,
Like,
Madam Mayor, I would suggest we do a roll call vote on this one.
All right. Even though we've already voted, Tom? Started to vote?
Yeah, because I was unclear to me at least who was.
Yep.
Wasn't and what they were.
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote.
Councilman Fraley, nay.
Councilmember London,
Aye.
Councilmember Zahn,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall.
I guess, yeah, I'll vote aye.
Okay, motion carries. All right, a motion to adjourn would be in order. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
No,
Oh,
it's more.
start. Okay,
You should probably figure out now how you're gonna assign duties, who's gonna be responsible for that.
Right.
That's all I got.
Assign the duties.
I'm sure Jesse has a motion around that.
Well, you just assigned some duties of the city administrator position to two people, I think by that vote, correct?
Who does what? Who does what?
And who's in charge of telling them what that what is?
Yep.
Okay. So assuming Kiki maintains the position of interim city administrator and Maggie maintaining the position of interim treasurer, on that basis, those two it's in the packet.
Jesse, do you mind if I jump in here for a second?
Yeah, please do, because it's gonna take me a second to find those job
Okay,
duties.
I will buy you time. So the mayor is correct in stating that the city administrator is connected to the role of treasurer. So the individual who takes on the treasurer duties and responsibilities would be considered a deputy treasurer, would be under the city administrator stuff.
No, okay.
You catch that, Tom?
What? No.
Angel, could you please repeat that?
Yeah, no worries. So the mayor was correct in stating that the city administrator job description also includes that treasurer role. So then the person who takes on, the individual who takes on the duties as treasurer would be considered the deputy treasurer.
And it's not out of our ordinances to split it?
It wouldn't be splitting it at that point because that would be considered a deputy treasurer. It'd be under that city administrator / treasurer role.
Sorry, bear with me.
Well, the motion would be Kiki would be appointed the interim administrator and Maggie would be in the deputy treasurer,
Mhm.
based on what Angel just said.
Do you need the precise language though?
I don't think so.
I don't
Okay.
think so, right? It would
No.
just be
Mhm.
to motion to appoint Kiki the duties and responsibilities of the interim administrator and Maggie the duties and responsibilities of the deputy treasurer.
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
And then again, my original motion was to not have it be after they meet and discuss with city council designees. Does there need to be any clarification onto that?
Well, I think I just made the motion without that. So if there's a second, it's just straightforward.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, Tom, now can we adjourn?
Well, can we still ask any questions at this point? Okay, so before we move on and adjourn though, I still want to know, do they even accept?
Well, it doesn't matter. The motions are passed.
Okay.
It's
Also,
immaterial.
also too, back to my point and Tom's point too, at any time, moving ahead, especially with the land purchases, whatever, we still maintain the right to bring somebody else on to help us down the road. Once, you know, if we see the workload's too great, something else, we still have the opportunity to bring somebody like Tim back in.
Yeah, we can,
That we.
That's
that-
on your agenda here.
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you're either gonna make a decision to start that process or hold off on it. But it's on your agenda here before you adjourn. That's gotta be figured out.
okay.
Well, I think the discussion that I heard from council was they were not interested in looking for interim like a Tim Cruikshank, but just going straight to a search for a full-time administrator. That's what I thought I heard from the workshop, from all of the council members. Please speak up if I heard wrong.
Well, I would be interested in an interim city administrator. I would be, but I think I'm about the only one. So,
An additional one?
Yeah, he's saying like a Tim Cruikshank.
well, it's, you know, like, yeah, to get us through some things, but I mean, if the majority's, I mean, with the conversations, I think I'm the only one that looks at that. So let's do this. And Joe might have some interest in that too, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree, and as I look ahead, I don't think that, you know, us not trying to do every effort to move all these items ahead, like Tom mentioned, I mean, we have this road property to talk about. We have a tremendous amount of stuff coming in the city, and to sit here and just make that decision tonight for, you know, what this burden will be going forward on stuff, I think it'd be premature of us for the entire community to say, no, we're not gonna entertain that down the road based upon, forgive me, Ally, what's the name of the company we used last time?
Drum, DDA.
DDA, yeah. That, you know, if they're like, hey, you're looking at 10 months, 12 months, whatever, 14 months, I think, you know, finding that information out from them right away should be done to discuss this, you know, at a later date, you know, moving forward on whatever to, once again, provide the best service for the town, the community, and to move all these items ahead. Just knowing that, you know, Maggie and Kiki, they already have roles, you know, and that we're not overwhelming them with stuff. That's my fear that I can say right now. You
but
know,
how long are we gonna wait?
So do we have a motion around that or
No,
not?
there's no motion. I just want to say that I'm not gonna take that completely off the table for myself, you know, also too. We did have one more department head that wasn't mentioned that just walked in too, that, you know, the fire chief, you know, put him in the role.
I think he declined by text.
So
Yeah.
I'm
So
just
do we
saying,
have
as we move ahead, this item here, you know, I think maybe that should be on the agenda or come up future as we move through this process in this step number one. I'd say I wouldn't completely take that off the table.
But I would like to have clarification as how long do we want to wait? Because right now it's open-ended.
Right.
You know, so, and a future date, what is that, in 2 years?
No, I mean, so with this date, I would say by next meeting, we are ruling on who we're picking to help find them in a, you know, that has to be on next month's agenda. Here you go. We have budgets and everything back from somebody we're ruling to pick to start this. Even if they come back, I would like to see us have a special meeting to pick a company to get this rolling that quick. You know, if we get numbers back from companies to get this rolling, you know, not even wait a full month.
Oh, yeah.
You know, as fast as we can get it back, because like I said, it's my goal to move through this as quick as possible because we have so many bigger issues in this town to get moved on to than this, in my viewpoint.
Yep.
So move forward with a full-time city administrator, okay?
Yeah, I mean, if they come back and they say, hey, realistically, in our neck of the woods, you might be looking at 12 months, then let's have a meeting and talk about this conversation then right away.
So maybe the thing to do is make a motion now with respect to agenda item D to say you'll defer the decision to a later date or possibly the next city council agenda about whether you're even gonna talk about a Tim Cruikshank type replacement.
I would make a motion that we defer that item to the July council meeting. And let's give it a month and see how people are feeling with workload and responsibilities.
And then maybe we can have those responsibilities defined in
Yep.
that time.
So there's a motion on the table. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Now, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion to adjourn is not debatable. All those, no, because we made the motion. Bring this up July.
Got it.
Yep. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the special meeting is adjourned. Let's take 5.